Hello and welcome to Real Menopause Talk. My guest today is Lavinia Winch. Lavinia is happily married, mother of 3 children and many grandchildren, and about to celebrate her 70th birthday. She's an ambassador for Yes Organics, who make vaginal lubricants and moisturisers that are carefully balanced to take care of the body. Somewhere between 50 and 80% of menopausal women experience vaginal dryness caused by declining estrogen levels. This can cause pain during sex, elevated vaginal pH, and sometimes this can lead to even sitting down, causing pain. Chemically induced menopause, as with breast cancer treatment or having a hysterectomy, creates the same effect, as can pregnancy, breastfeeding, taking antidepressants, the pill, antihistamines, or suffering from stress. Hello, being female. Unsurprisingly, most women can benefit from lubricants or moisturisers at some stage in their lives. Lavinia certainly knows what she's talking about, having been diagnosed with endometrial cancer at the age of 62, with a following radical hysterectomy, and working for Yes Organics. You know you're in safe hands. We met up so I could discover more. Lavinia, lovely to meet you. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Hattie.
Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your background and your work?
Okay, so yes, I'm going to be 70 this year, so it's a big year for me. I'm married and have been married for 44 years to a wonderful man, and we have 3 children, grown-up children, and 6 grandchildren. So work-wise, my early work years, I worked in film production and stills photography. Amazing job. This was like in London in the early 70s. Very exciting time to be in the creative industries.
Yeah.
Then when I had my kids, I actually decided I wanted to be at home. So I didn't work for 20 years, but I did lots of sort of voluntary things. I got involved with the NCT, the National Childbirth Trust, and kept my hand in at things just on a sort of voluntary basis. And it wasn't until my youngest was about 14 that I was offered a job in sort of business development, very different to what I'd done before. But it got me back into work and back into using computers, because when I'd left my previous job, I was still on an electric typewriter. So that was a really great opportunity to come back to something. And then what happened was that in 2009, I met the 2 women that started Yes Organics, the company that I've worked for the last 13 years. I had no idea what this was going to turn into. I just thought that this was an interesting business. It was very local to me. It was very relevant to me. And I just thought this was something that I'd like to do. So what was amazing for me was to realise that at the age of 57, probably going through the menopause or a little bit postmenopausal at that stage, that here was an opportunity for a whole new career. I didn't realise it at the time, but looking back on it now, I think it was a great opportunity. And I'm very keen for people to realise that actually that can happen to anybody. It's not too late to start something new.
I am very hopeful for many people that it is a realisation point that we can reinvent ourselves if we wish to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly what happened to me.
Obviously, at 70, you are postmenopausal. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of menopause?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say I was hugely ignorant. I do remember my mum, round about the age of 50, we were on a holiday in America, and I remember she was always opening the window because she was very hot and she was obviously having some hot flushes. And when we were in New York, she would keep whizzing into a shop that was air conditioned in order to cool down. But we didn't talk about it. She didn't talk to me about anything. She didn't talk to me about periods. I think it was just her generation. You know, she was born in 1922. So it was, for her, it wasn't something you talked about. And so as I sort of went 40s, early 40s towards my 50s, I really didn't think about it at all. And we are talking 20 years ago. So, there was not a lot of talk about menopause at that stage. But what happened to me was that I started to get some sort of urinary symptoms, feelings of possibly having a little bit of cystitis, a little bit more frequency, a bit of urgency. And I went to a urologist, and the urologist did a cystoscopy and said, there's nothing wrong with you. He never asked me about any of symptoms. He never talked about my age. He never asked me whether I was still having periods. And I think that was very short-sighted of him at that stage, because it turns out we now know, and I want to make this really clear because a lot of people don't realize the importance of estrogen in terms of our bladder health as well as our vaginal health. So it wasn't until I pushed to see a urogynecologist that I was told this is classic menopause. So that was 20 years ago. It took me a lot of drive and determination to get to the bottom of what was going on. So that was my first awareness, really. I can't remember now, looking back, exactly when my period stopped. But what they recommended at that stage was HRT, a patch, and some vaginal estrogen. So as a result, I didn't really experience any of the other symptoms. I didn't ever have hot flushes. Possibly my confidence was a little bit lower than it had been, maybe a little bit of an anxiety. But I stayed on HRT, and I'm still on a patch and vaginal estrogen, 20 years later. So, for me, it was a very different experience to what it might be for other people.
Have you got any intention of staying on or coming off HRT?
I really like to stay on it. So what happened, in fact, was when I was 62, I was diagnosed with endometrial cancer. So I had a radical hysterectomy. So that's everything when you have your ovaries, your fallopian tubes, your womb, and your cervix removed. And as a result of that, you don't need to take progesterone anymore as part of the HRT, because the progesterone is there to protect the lining of the womb. And if you don't have a womb, if you've had a hysterectomy, then you don't need progesterone anymore. So I'm on estrogen only. And the estrogen only, taken as a patch transdermally, has a much, much lower risk for breast cancer. It helps with my confidence. It helps with my energy levels, and the vaginal estrogen is obviously something that is recommended to be taken long term. Now, I don't have any intention of stopping. I think I have to have a checkup. I have to chat to my GP. But, to be honest, because of my job working for the SCS company or for Yes Organics, where I've been to many, many medical conferences, over 200 medical conferences, many of those are menopausal. I have been privileged enough to listen to some of the top menopause specialists in the world. I even went to Canada for the International Menopause Society World Congress. And I could sit through those lectures. So I probably know a little bit more than my GP.
Yeah, it sounds like it with that kind of experience, yes.
So if he says to me, don't you think you ought to be coming off estrogen, I can actually say, well, to be honest, I don't think I really need to come off it. I'm feeling really well on it. So that's my attitude, and I think that it's that knowledge that I have that allows me to make those sort of choices for myself.
How did you join Yes Organics, and how did it come to be?
Oh, it's a wonderful story how it came to be, really. Sarah Brooks, who's one of the co-founders of the business, had a background in chemistry, and she was working for Pfizer at the time. We're talking about sort of round about 2000, 2001, 2002. And it was the time when Viagra was being developed. And what happened with Viagra was that the men, of course, were absolutely thrilled with this wonderful new little blue pill. But their partners were very often postmenopausal and finding things quite difficult. And what they did is they wrote to Pfizer and they said, what have you done? You've really messed up our lives, because we were quite happy as things were. Now we've got our husbands who are rearing to go at all times. And we're really struggling with postmenopausal vaginal dryness. And Sarah thought, well, why can't they just use a standard lubricant like KY, for instance? And so she started to look at what was in KY because she had an interest in chemistry. And she also was aware of the toxic overload that our bodies are taking on as a result of the environment and the products that we use generally. And when she looked at what the ingredients were in KY, she realized that actually they're not really very good as a lubricant. They might be okay for an investigation in a hospital setting. But to be used as a lubricant, they've actually got ingredients in them which can irritate. And so she decided that she wanted to have a complete life change. She wanted to do something very ethical, something that was good for our bodies, something that was good for the planet. And with her friend, Susie Lennox, they went off to Bali for 6 weeks and they thought about what they could do, particularly in terms of women's intimate health. They wanted to lift the taboo. They wanted to produce a product that was not smutty, that was good for the body, good for the planet. And they spent 3 years. They sold their houses. Both of them sold their houses, and they spent 3 years researching a formulation and eventually launched the product in 2006. And they launched it from their own home, which was just up the road from where I live. And so I got to hear that they were there. And in fact, they contacted my husband to ask if he might be able to help them a little bit with their retail sales because he had a background in retail. And when he met them, he said, "Oh my God, you have to meet these two women. They are amazing. And this is what they're producing." And so I met them and I was between jobs and I just thought, "I'd like to come and work for you." And I just said, "Please, can I come and work for you?" So I spent probably about 6 months literally just packing and learning about the product and learning about our customers. And what happened was that although they thought they were producing just a purely organic pleasure product, once they launched the company, a lot of menopausal women and women who've had breast cancer were contacting them saying, "This product is magical. This product has changed our lives. This has made a difference." And that's when we became much more interested in the medical side and eventually got the products on prescription as well. And that's when I took a real interest because I had issues that were challenging for me in terms of dryness and using lubricants that were very bad. And I really got involved and interested in the medical side and the fact that this product is brilliant for certain conditions, particularly menopausal women.
That is just wonderful. Absolutely terrific story. How serendipitous as well. What are the most common questions that you get asked?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, Hattie. Again, because of my job with Yes Organics, the question that I get asked the most, because women are told that it would be a good idea when they're menopausal to consider a vaginal moisturizer or a lubricant, probably the most common question I get is saying, "Could you please explain to me what is the difference between a moisturizer and a lubricant?" And I can give you the answer to that right now if you'd like it.
Yes, please.
So a vaginal moisturizer is something that you'd use on a daily basis over a long period of time, just like you moisturize your face or any other part of your body, if you're feeling a little bit dry and uncomfortable. And there are plenty of people that may not even be sexually active, but just feel uncomfortable as they go through the menopause, and the lack of estrogen means that things feel much less moist. And that can be just walking or sitting down or anything. So that's a vaginal moisturizer. It's designed to be used over a long period of time and on a regular basis. And a lubricant, and they come in different forms. We do a water-based one and an oil-based one. They are specifically for sex. And they will make sure that you have some immediate lubrication right there and then when you need it. And the water-based lubricant will be absorbed fairly quickly. It's very natural. It feels exactly like your own moisture. But an oil-based lubricant, which is not condom compatible, is a much longer lasting and a much richer, it has a different feel, but a lot of people find that a really helpful formula for if things are quite a little bit dry and uncomfortable. And even better is when you use them together. It's something that we call double glide, where you apply the oil first to give the protection to the tissue, and then you put water over the top, and the water just slides over the top of the oil. So that's the question that I get asked most by healthcare professionals and by women. And it is important because quite often advice says if you're suffering from dryness, use moisturizers and lubricants, and that's all they say. And they don't talk about the importance of looking at the ingredients. It's really important to avoid using a product that has glycerin in it, which can be an irritant, parabens, which mimic estrogen, and also glycols, which can also be irritating, and sugar and sweeteners and flavors and perfume. Keep to something that's really natural and preferably organic. And if you do experience any irritation from these products, then change immediately and find something that suits you.
Those must be your top selling products. Have you got anything else that you offer?
Yes, we have an intimate wash. And our intimate washes are something that can be quite controversial because we are led to believe that it's all you need to do to wash your external area around the vulva is water. We should never we never need to wash inside the vagina because it is self-cleaning. But some people would like to have something very natural to use externally, and you shouldn't be using soap because that can change the pH. So we, on the request of our customers, came up with a formulation for a very natural cleansing wash. It's just a foam wash. It's called Yes Cleanse. And that it can be used in the shower or in the bath just to wash externally. And then we also, quite recently, again, requested by our customers, released on a limited edition, a clitoral stimulating oil. So there are quite a few people, as we get older, it can sometimes be the sensation in terms of orgasm or reaching orgasm can be difficult. And for women, again, that have had chemotherapy or have had surgical menopause. So we produce an organic oil, which is called Yes, Oh Yes. And we're just receiving the feedback from the first sort of 1,000 units that we sold just online. And we're going to make a decision as to whether we do another run of that as well. But that's our latest product.
What's your feedback so far?
It's looking good. It's looking good. I think it's going to be very individual. I think there are going to be some people that think it's absolutely amazing and it does wonderful things for them, and there may be other people that say, "Well, it didn't really make much difference for me." So I think we're going to look at the results of that survey and see what comes back. But I think, like all things, we're all different, and it'll have a different effect on different people.
Very interesting. Going back a bit to your hysterectomy, how well were you prepared for what happened next? Because being postmenopausal and having a hysterectomy will be different from, say, in your 30s. How were you taken care of?
Oh, well, I've been on a little bit of a campaign to make changes there because of my background and because of my work, I knew what to expect. I was already postmenopausal, but still, there are changes that happen when you have a radical hysterectomy, where your cervix is removed as well. And I had no information. You are allocated a Macmillan gynae nurse, but it was up to me to bring up the topic, and I had to go back to my surgeon and say, I'm finding things quite difficult. Can you just make sure that everything is as it should be? So that's when you're already postmenopausal. If you have surgical menopause at a much younger age, it is much more of a challenge because you're plunged immediately into a surgical menopause, and you should be offered HRT at that point. We are trying to encourage healthcare professionals, and there are some fantastic ones out there who are working to make it really important topic that is brought up in the best possible way. And certainly there are some booklets published by Macmillan Cancer that do give you some preparation. But, when you're first diagnosed and you're going through surgery, you're not really in the right place to read a booklet straight away. So I am continuing to work, and I do a lot of this through my job, working with healthcare professionals and encouraging them to find a way. They don't need to know everything, but they need to be able to signpost women for the right help that they can get. So it's a challenge. It wasn't so much of a challenge for me because I was able to ask for the help that I needed and I knew where to go and what to do. But for many people, it's a really difficult time.
I can imagine. And from the responses I've had from some women through Instagram, even, they've been requesting where to find help. So fortunately, I have a few resources. I can send them in the right direction. But the more out there that supports them post-hysterectomy or even pre-hysterectomy, the better. I feel that's very, very important and currently rather underserved.
Yeah, I did a webinar, I've done a couple of webinars. I can share those resources with you, those links with you.
That would be wonderful. Then I can put the details in the show notes. Yes, please. Thank you. Any advice for women about to have a hysterectomy that might not have been covered by their medical professional?
I think read the booklets, read the literature, talk to your partners if you are in a relationship, and explain that things are going to be a little bit different. In the same way that we hope that you'll be able to talk to your partner as you're going through menopause as well. Communication is absolutely key, and we need our partners to understand what we might be going through. Be prepared, but there's quite a lot to focus on when you're having surgery. If you're having a hysterectomy because of cancer diagnosis, that's quite a big thing. If you're having a hysterectomy because of endometriosis or fibroids or something like that, that's a little bit different. But a cancer diagnosis is scary for anybody. So there's quite a lot to take on. So it might be a question of seeking the help afterwards. There is plenty of help out there, and in terms of resources, online resources, and people that can actually help you as well.
Any advice for men?
Wow, yes. Advice for men. Again, there are some resources that men can find ways of the way that they can support their partners through menopause. I think the main thing is that if we can educate our sons, so it's the next generation down, then it's going to be a much more natural process as they go through life with their partner. Be understanding and get educated so that you know and you understand what your partner is going through.
Is it easy to talk about vaginas and women's health, women's intimate health in your household and amongst your friends and in wider circles?
Yeah, really interesting. I mean, I wasn't certainly brought up to speak openly, but I think getting this job, and certainly within my own relationship, I am married to somebody who's very, very open and very interested and loves women for what they are in the nicest possible way. He wanted to be a doctor initially, so it's always been very easy with my husband. So therefore, it became, when I started working for the company, it became completely natural to talk about these things. And very early on, when I first joined the company, I was also training to be a breastfeeding counsellor with the NCT. In fact, I did 2 years of training, but I never quite finished that because the job took over. If anybody asked my kids, and we're talking about 2 boys and a daughter, what their mum did, they used to say, well, she works in boobs and lube. So it's always been something that within the home, completely okay to talk about and completely open. I'm sure they found it a little bit tricky at times, but I really wanted them to grow up to be able to talk with their partners and to talk openly and feel comfortable about women's health issues. Outside the home, amongst my friends, again, because I work for a company, it's been much easier. But you have to follow the cue from each individual person, I think. Yeah. Some people find it easy. Some people find it challenging. And what happens, of course, is at dinner parties, I find myself sitting next to men and they ask me what I do, if they bother to ask me what they do, because, of course, a lot of men presume I'm just a housewife. So if they bother to ask me what I do, I absolutely love telling them, and I love watching the reaction on their face. And it's brilliant. Sometimes you get somebody who says, oh, we use the product. It's absolutely brilliant. And other times you can see them going slightly red and changing the subject immediately. But I am a bit pushy because I think it's so important that people feel comfortable to talk about it. And if they can't talk about it, then they're very likely not talking about it with their partner as well. And we know that from a lot of the workshops that I do with women that have had breast cancer and are struggling with their intimate health. They haven't been able to bring that topic up with their partners. And the healthcare professionals have found it difficult to bring up. So, it's a mixed bag, isn't it? I think it's getting much better. I think, and things like, your podcast, Hattie, and some of the documentaries, social media, the brilliant women that are campaigning to talk about these issues are making a real difference.
Having a job like yours is an instant opener for conversation, which is terrific. You're absolutely right. The variation of responses is either very open and willing to talk about it and interested and interesting, or a total shutdown. What would be your key piece of advice to somebody entering menopause?
I think 1 or 2 pieces of advice. I think the first thing is to educate yourself. There's some really good literature, there's some really good books out there on menopause written by healthcare professionals, but with women in mind, with normal women like us in mind. So that's the first thing, is be educated and then know your body. Really listen to your body and think about what's happening as you go through. And I think that we are now more aware that perimenopause can start in the early 40s. So if we recognize some of those changes, and we are educated, then we are empowered to get the help that we need. And, talking to friends is important, but actually first port of call should really be your GP. But you need to be educated before you go to the GP. You need to be empowered so that you can get the best from that appointment and find the best help for yourself.
As we've touched on, the perception of perimenopause and menopause is changing in society, certainly in the UK, hopefully worldwide. What else can we do to make it an easier subject to talk about?
Well, we need to normalise it. That's the thing, isn't it? So I think that all the things that are happening right now are making a real difference. I think social media has been pretty huge, and the main media as well. The documentary that Davina McCall produced was absolutely brilliant. What's happening in the Houses of Parliament, the campaign Make Menopause Matter, which has already managed to get menopause on the curriculum for secondary schools, and making changes in terms of menopause in the workplace. Podcasts like your own and talking to friends and family. I think all of this is going to make a difference, but ultimately it's about normalising the conversation.
You've given a wonderful amount of information and it will be so valuable to so many people, particularly actually the post-chemotherapy. I think that must be very hard for very many women because of the emotion around both subjects. But when you combine the two, I can't even imagine it, actually.
But very sadly, the Haven, Breast Cancer Haven, which is a breast cancer charity with drop-in centres around the country, I was giving workshops there in small groups of women and talking about intimate health. And every single woman that came in there said nobody had warned them about the lack of estrogen and how it was going to affect their intimate lives. And after they finished their treatment, they just felt that they were left really with no support in that area. Very sadly, Breast Cancer Haven is not functioning anymore, but I will do workshops at breast cancer support groups and anywhere locally that I can get to. And that's making a difference. Those women, just to be able to talk about it and know that there's help is huge. But you're right, it's a huge area. Post-cancer, in terms of the long-term effect on your intimate health, is a very big issue, and we need to continue to work really hard to make changes there so that women feel supported.
Lavinia, where can people find you so that I can put all of that in the show notes? Which is the best website? Because I found two.
Well, the one is the American one. Yeah, one is, is for America. So it's yesyesYes.org. Our Instagram handle is @yes_organics. We've got LinkedIn, Facebook. And in terms of myself,
yes,
I'm happy to give talks, or, if anybody's running any events, I'm very happy to turn up and give talks. And they can contact me at my Yes email, which is lavinia@yesyesYes.org. And I love the fact that for the first 10 years that I worked for the company, I thought that the org was for orgasm. But it's for organics.
If only. Thank you so much for your time. It is so lovely to meet you.
And you too. It's an absolute joy. I could talk forever.
I will put all the details where you can find Lavinia and Yes Organics and our Yes Organics for the US in the show notes. Follow us on the podcast apps so you never miss an episode, and spread the word. Getting people listening and talking is what will really make the change. Thank you for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.